He was given the name Omawale. The sun returns.
When my father was abroad, we had a world map on the living room wall. And anytime you got a little lonesome and wondered where Daddy was, we'd run over to that map. And where is he now? And he's in Cairo, which is the capital of Egypt. And he's over here with Nkrumah, and he's over. So there was a different kind of passage that we maintained when he was abroad.
Malcolm returned in late November 1964. He resumed the weekly OAAU rallies at the Audubon Ballroom and continued his collaboration with Alex Haley on his autobiography.
He said, you know, I'm writing this book and I don't really know about doing this book. He had some problems with the family having to be subjected to the things that he would say. I said, Malcolm, you know what? None of us are going to ever amount to anything until we get our mother out of Kalamazoo. It had preyed on my mind for years, and I didn't talk about it, but it was eating away. And he looked at me like, I'm glad you said that, because it's been bothering me too. And he said, Bonnie, promise, I'll do something. And the next thing, he never got back to me. The next thing I knew, I got a call. My mother was in Lansing at my brother Filbert's.
And he later told me that it had been pent up in him all these years. He didn't want to think about it. He certainly didn't want to talk about it because he did not feel good about it. But he felt so great when he and his brother came together to have their mother released.
In December 1964, Malcolm debated at the Oxford Union in England.
I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, to be or not to be. He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Malcolm was always involved somewhere in the struggle. And I remember in January of 1965, Juanita Poitier set up a meeting at her house for the regular civil rights leaders to meet with Malcolm X, to work out the differences between us so we could come from that meeting with a common platform. Once again, A. Philip Randolph was there, Whitney Young was there, Dorothy Height was there, Malcolm X was there, several others were there. Martin Luther King couldn't make it, but he sent a representative. And we spent that day discussing Malcolm's philosophy, the mistakes he made, what to do now, and how he could get on board the people's struggle that was taking place.
In his effort to support a Black United Front, Malcolm accepted an invitation from SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, to speak in Selma, Alabama. It was the first time he had traveled south to work with the civil rights movement.
And I think that the people in this part of the world would do well to listen to Dr. Martin Luther King and give him what he's asking for and give it to him fast before some other factions come along
along and try to do it another way.
The next week, Malcolm was denied entry into France on the grounds that his presence would disturb public order. This time, Malcolm began to believe that the forces arrayed against him were bigger than the Nation of Islam. But he maintained his relentless pace.
Whenever I saw my father out publicly, you know, from a child's perspective, you know, at an airport, it was an invasion. You know, you're going to pick up Daddy from the airport, and there's a slew of photographers and other people, and you haven't seen him in 2-3 weeks, and all you want is that hug. I was certainly privy to the fact that we were being stalked as a family, that the atmosphere surrounding the house, the cars that would be parked, faces that were familiar to me once upon a time. Their attitudes had changed.
The night Malcolm returned from Europe, his family's home was firebombed. Asleep in the house were Malcolm, his pregnant wife, his 4 children. They escaped unharmed.
And this was probably the thing that surfacely upset him most, because this got underneath the image of Malcolm, the fearsome, the indomitable Malcolm X. This got to the father and the husband of Sister Betty and their daughters.
Well, he has told me in the past that he has been having some harassment. Could you give us an idea of some of the things that have happened?
Well, in July, when I was in the hospital having my last baby, my 3 small daughters saw my husband almost killed across the street. And
how was he almost killed?
Well, he was in his car. Men were rushing to the side of his car, on both sides of it, and he managed to get away.
Had you had any threats, anything like this?
Had any threats? That's all I get is threats. I get not less than 6 or 7 threatening phone calls every day.
I was surprised to hear that the house had been bombed. But I was not surprised to know that it had been done by Muslims, because I know that's the way they fight. I know that, be that the case, it could not have happened without Yusuf Shah. Could not have happened. It could not have happened except by the Muslims that are there in New York.
The Nation of Islam accused Malcolm of setting fire to his own home rather than vacating as ordered by the court. Later that day, the nation's representative, Captain Joseph, inspected the scene.
Who bombed his house?
I don't know. All we know, it just got on fire.
Does Malcolm know who bombed his house?
I don't know. He never said. And if he did, you know, he should have brought him to justice.
There were news reports of threats against his life. Is his life really in danger?
Maybe it was. He said it was. He said it was.
Do you feel now that there was a climate within the nation itself that put his life in danger?
Well, as you know, in a nation, you have all kinds of people. And they have different thoughts. You have sympathizers. They have different thoughts. You know? And you have people that not even attached to the community. That likes what they hear, but you just can't live the life. Anything might happen. That scare you. So anything could happen. The atmosphere was there. What was being said was there. You see? You got to understand, you know, Mr. Muhammad and what he represented. That's what the people don't understand.
I wanted you to know that my house was bombed. It was bombed by the black Muslim movement upon the orders of Elijah Muhammad. Now, they had come around, so they had planned to do it from the front and the back so that I couldn't get out. And the fire hit the window, and it woke up my second oldest baby. But the fire burned on the outside of the house. But I had that one. gone through that window, it would have fallen on a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old girl, and a 2-year-old girl. And I'm going to tell you, if it had done it, I'd taken my rifle and gone after anybody